Hello Mindsetters and welcome to today's Learn Extra Live Winter School Edition. Today we're here doing life sciences. We're here with our favorite biology teacher, Aslam. How are you doing, Aslam?
Good, and you, Lloyd?
I'm all good, and you too, Aslam. So today we're going to be doing reproduction, but before we get to that, let me highlight some pages that you can get hold of us through. So you can get hold of us through the Facebook page, direct all your questions throughout the lesson through that Facebook page, and we'll be answering it. I'll try and answer any questions. And any questions that I can't get to, you can forward those questions onto the help desk. That's learn.mindset.co.za/help desk. You can also contact us on Twitter, on our Twitter page, and our Twitter handle is @LearnExtra with an X. So without further ado, there's also another question coming up, well, a competition actually, and it's the World Cup competition, and you can win yourself a tablet sponsored by Intel. And to win that tablet, all you have to do is choose your favorite 4 teams that are playing today, and that's between France, Nigeria, Algeria, and Germany. Go onto our Facebook page and all the details are there, and you can be walking away with a new tablet sponsored by Intel. So without further ado, let me hand you over to Aslam. Enjoy the lesson.
Hi guys, and welcome back. What are you waiting for? You should be going to get that tablet. Get to the Facebook page and type away so that you can be in line to win that tablet from Intel. What a nice way to start your holidays. Guys, as Lloyd has told you, we're going to be dealing with reproduction, and notice we didn't say human reproduction, we said reproduction. And if you know your syllabus, then you would know that we have 2 parts to reproduction, and that is reproduction in vertebrates and reproduction in humans. And really speaking, this section has been reduced from previous years, and we're only looking at strategies among some of the vertebrates that enhance their ability to reproduce. Good? What are we actually looking at? We want to answer questions. Remember, we are doing winter revision. So here we tackle questions. And remember, your questions are even more valuable than the questions that we have up here. So we look at different questions on different reproductive strategies of vertebrates. That was the first thing that I told you. And then we look at the structure and function of the male and female reproductive organs in humans specifically. And finally, we look at the processes involved in human reproduction, all the different processes from the beginning onwards. You've got to understand that this section has a leaning towards meiosis, a little bit of genetics as well. And reproductive strategies can also lend itself towards some of the studies in evolution. Good? Here's our challenge question. Let's start with that one. And the question is, implanon is a contraceptive device that is inserted under a woman's skin. So it's a contraceptive device that is inserted under a woman's skin. What does it do? It prevents pregnancy for up to 3 years. Wow. So they're inserting the substance and it lasts for up to 3 years. It is a small rod that continuously releases progesterone. I'm hoping you watching what I'm doing with the challenge question is what I'm keep singing about, and that is the homework. When you get a question, your homework is to identify the key words and make meaning of what the little passage is saying so that it makes it easier for you. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And you should mimic what I'm doing on the board, on your question paper, etc. Underline, use highlighters, whatever it makes you comfortable. Use those devices. Right? Into her blood. This progesterone prevents fertilization from taking place. Now, obviously, we know that in terms of our reproductive work that we have done and about contraceptives. So now what this thing is asking you to do is to link your functioning of the hormones to how this hormone can be used as a contraceptive. Now, what must you do? Was there any question there? Not yet, right? So there's no question there. That's just information. Now we go to the questions. The first question says, explain how implanon prevents fertilization. They told you that it prevents fertilization. Now they're saying, explain how. How is this made possible? What does implanon do to prevent fertilization? This is the point. Second one, suggest one advantage of using implanon rather than an oral contraceptive. Oral contraceptive would be, example, the pill. How is implanon better than using the pill, for example? So that is our challenge question. So you fire away, and while we're busy talking and in your breaks, you look at how we can work around it, and you post your answers as you do usually, and we will then discuss that answer later. We want to see how, now this is a classic example of how you need to apply your knowledge. You know the hormones in the reproductive system. Can you apply your knowledge on that and a little bit about contraception, put these things together and come up with an answer? Remember, in life sciences, this is the most important skill, is to apply your knowledge. Knowing it is one thing. Memorizing it is one thing. But being able to use that memorized information in another situation, that's where it separates the boys from the men, if I may use that term. Now, I thought it would be fitting because reproduction is part of paper 1. Remember, in 2014, according to CAPS, reproduction is part of paper 1. So, just to remind ourselves what is found in paper 1, and also looking at the weightings so that we understand the importance of certain sections. So, in this paper 1, we have meiosis. Now, notice meiosis is in paper 1 and 2. When we come across on Wednesday, when we do a meiosis and DNA, I will then highlight that again. Have reproduction in vertebrates, human reproduction. In other words, one heading, reproduction. Now, let's go to this side. This side is telling you the percentage weighting and the marked weighting. The paper 1 and paper 2 are each out of 150. In this paper, 21% is from reproduction in humans only. That's 31 marks. And another 4% from vertebrate reproduction. So together, that's 25%, that's a quarter of your paper. This is why we've had this double session for reproduction put in for your revision, because of the mark allocation. And notice the meiosis is put in here and in the next section because meiosis is related to reproduction more with the actual processes of reproduction. Then we move on to the other sections, responding to the environment. And here, by the way, we're talking of the nervous system and receptors. Makes up your 40 marks there, that's quite a bit. Then you have human endocrine system, 10%, homeostasis in humans, 7, and responding in plants, that means plant hormones, 7. That's 15, 11, 11, and your last year's work, grade 11 work, 25 marks there is 17%. So a big slice of this paper comes from last year's work as well. So if you take just the reproduction that I spoke about and you add that to the environment, it's 31 and 6, 37 marks, almost 40 you can say, and another 25 marks. So 65, take away a little bit, say 60 marks out of the paper if you just learn reproduction and human impact. Guys, 60 is a pass mark already in your paper out of 150. So think about that carefully when you are studying. You need to use this, coming from the exam guideline, to let you know or to inform you how to study as well. Good. Lloyd, are you okay?
Yeah,
you
it's
sure?
all good.
Yeah. I'm not boring you, am I?
No, it's very interesting, in fact.
Okay, now we're going to very interesting stuff, Lloyd. The diagrams below show the human male and female reproductive systems. So they're giving you 2 diagrams. Here you go, 2 diagrams. And if you were watching the revision segment before this one, in other words, that which played a little earlier today, and if you put that together now, you'll notice that the diagrams have not changed in this question. I've left that question here deliberately to show you that we can use a similar diagram and ask other questions, because there's plenty of things there. So here they're saying, write the letter A to H and the name. Instruction important. You have to write the letter and the name. If the instruction says letter only, then you must only give the letter, the name only, the name only. Here it says letter and name. Remember, in a question where they ask you for the letter only and you give the name, you are not credited, you do not get marks. Or if they ask you for the name and you give the letter, you are not given marks for that. Please follow instructions. Right. So here they're saying, which transports sperm out of the body. Now that shouldn't be too hard for you to learn. I drew something somewhere. Where? Okay, that got there. All right. Which transports sperms out of the body. You could look at the human male side. By now, at your age, you should know the difference between the male and the female. I should have asked that first. Which is the male, which is the female, to test you whether you know that. But you should know that by now, right? So in the male part, we're looking for that part which transports sperm out of the body. Now, automatically in your mind, you're looking for urethra, because the urethra is the actual part that deposits sperm out of the body. However, they're asking you for the letter and the name of the part. So in this particular diagram, is there any label line going to urethra? Yes, it is. It is B in this case here, all right? And therefore, our answer would be B. And the name. See, I would have already lost 1 mark because I didn't give the name. B, the urethra. See how easy it is to lose a single mark just like that. And sometimes we think that, it's just 1 mark. What's the big deal about it? But if you lose 1 mark along the paper, you add all those there, you lose your A, or you fail because of that. Or you lose a symbol. So you need to conserve your marks where you're going. Where ovulation occurs, ovulation would take place obviously from the ovary, and in our diagram that's F. And again, we lost another mark because we did not write the word ovary. We're not following instructions. Which houses the fertilized egg. Which houses the fertilized eggs. That means after fertilization takes place, where does implantation take place? And we know that that takes place in this area here, and that is G. And G is the uterus. Which is the birth canal? And that would be H. And that is the vagina. Which produces testosterone. That should be easy for you. That is C. And that is the testes. We lost a lot of marks. Look at this particular question now. If somebody marked my work, I would have already lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 marks. And the last one, which transports sperm to the ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct is around this area here, this area there, and the sperms are produced and stored, then they are stored there by the epididymis. So what is this tube? There's the tube there showing you A. Your answer is A. And what is the name of that tube? It's the vas deferens, or sperm duct. So look, Aslam lost 6 marks because he did not follow instruction, and you could do the same if you don't follow instructions. So please be careful about that. The diagram below represents a cross-section of a human seminiferous tubule. Don't be scared when you see a diagram like that. Look at the questions that follow, in which a process is occurring. Name the specific process illustrated in this. You can see what's happening. There's a seminiferous tubule, and the end product is a sperm. So what process is this? This is obviously spermatogenesis. Name the hormone produced by the organ containing the seminiferous tubule. That is the testes, and we know that just now we asked about that. It's the testosterone, the hormone. Give one function of the hormone labeled or named in question 2.2. It stimulates the development of primary sexual male sex organs. It also stimulates the development of secondary male characteristics, for example, the growth of the hair on the facial hair, armpits, and the pubic area, deepening of the voice, increase in the size of the muscular, etc. And obviously, it stimulates the development of sperm as well. Last couple of questions. How many chromosomes are there in each spermatogonium cell? That will be right on top there. And that would be 46 because it's diploid. Spermatid is 23 because meiosis would have taken place already before spermatid has been formed. Make a label drawing to show the structure of cell labeled A, that's a sperm. And I'm rushing through that one because it's easy to draw. Notice the labels. Notice that you have to have a caption. Make your diagram neat and clear. Your lines on your diagram must be solid lines. You see? You can't sketch. And your labels must be clear and they must not overlap. And only the labels that are prescribed in the exam guideline are required. We come back to this just after the break. Lloyd.
Wow, that is an interesting lesson going ahead there, guys. I hope you guys are keeping with it. If you guys have any questions, you can still get to us on our Facebook page. Remember, you can leave any questions there on the wall or through a message. And remember, there is that competition by Intel going on where you can win a pad or tablet. All you have to do is download the Curio app and sign up there. The word is learn in capital letters. Vote for your favorite team between France, Nigeria, Algeria, and Germany. And you could be walking away with that tablet at the end of the week. So until then, I'll catch you back after the break. Hey Mindsetters, and welcome back to today's winter school. Today we're doing life sciences and we're here with Aslam and he's teaching us reproduction. Remember about that competition that we're running through Intel. You can win yourself a tablet. Just download that Curio app. And as you get closer to 3:30, we're going to be cutting off that competition. So get your last entries through and we'll go over the leaderboard after this part of the lesson. Aslam, take it away.
Thank you, Lloyd. Hey, there you. I'm hoping Lloyd tells me that there's lots of action on that competition there, Lloyd. It's hotting up there. Guys, you better keep posting there, otherwise you're going to be left behind. Coming back to this diagram, before the break, we rushed through the diagram. Now, I want to show you how we can use a diagram to learn as well. One is to answer the question, but you can use a diagram to learn. Look at this diagram. It's just giving you a couple of labels here, spermatogonium, spermatid, and A. We didn't tell you what A is, but now because we answered the question, we know that's a sperm cell or spermatozoa. All right. Now, what I'm saying is, if we want to learn, this diagram is dealing with which process. We answered that question first. The process is spermatogenesis. So in other words, using this diagram, one can learn spermatogenesis, and it has been reduced to bare minimum for you in your exam guideline now. All you need to know is that a diploid cells in the seminiferous tubules, as we already told you, of the testes. So that's the first part. Where is it? It is in the testes. They told you that there already, and the diagram is telling you. So diploid cells in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. That is these cells here, the spermatogonia. You don't need to know the name spermatogonium or spermatogonia. You just need to know that these are diploid cells that are found in the seminiferous tubules of the testes. What do? They divide by meiosis to form haploid sperm cells. That's all you need to. The diagram is going through the whole process. The spermatogonium becomes a primary spermatocyte, secondary spermatocyte, spermatid, spermatozoa, eventually. You don't need to know all the details, but this is how it happens. Meiosis takes place, and this is what's going to happen. So from every one cell here, from every one cell there, you're going to get 4 sperm cells. And obviously, because meiosis is taking place, these sperm cells will have half the chromosome number, diploid, haploid, diploid, haploid. And because meiosis is taking place, these sperm cells would probably be different from each other. The chances of the probability of them being different is high because of crossing over that takes place in meiosis, and because of the random assortment of chromosomes during metaphase 1 of meiosis. Can you see how meiosis has a link to reproduction? Because meiosis, the main purpose is to produce sex cells. So both in spermatogenesis and oogenesis, the same thing happens, meiosis. By the way, if we didn't have this diagram here, we can say the same for oogenesis. Diploid cells in the ovary, in the follicle of the ovary, divide by meiosis to form haploid egg cells. So you're just changing the words to get the definition of oogenesis, the formation of egg cells. Together, by the way, it's called gametogenesis. 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 Genesis means to create, so the making of gametes. And you get spermatogenesis and oogenesis for eggs. Good. I think that covers that. And the last one thing again, let's go through the sperm cell again. Right? There we have the head of the sperm, this area here, the head. Inside this head we have a large nucleus, and on the tip, just below the front end, you have a line. You're going to draw a line like that, call it the acrosome. By the way, the acrosome secretes enzyme, which we call the hydrolyzing enzyme, which makes the membrane of the egg permeable. Permeable means to allow the sperm to go through. Good? All right, and then we have the middle piece here, and then we have the tail. This is what is prescribed in the exam guideline. The tail, the middle piece, the nucleus, the acrosome, and the head. Those are the labels that you need to know. So stick to those, and you would be successful. Right, now my favorite type of question, and that is the graph question. The graph below shows the concentration of 4 hormones in a woman's blood during one menstrual cycle. So on the y-axis, concentration of hormone in blood in arbitrary units. So we're not telling you whether it's percentage or milliliters or whatever, it's arbitrary units. And on the x-axis, we have time, and the unit is days. I'm highlighting these things always when I do the graph questions, so that you know when you're drawing your graphs, you need to keep all these things in mind. Notice heading with units, heading with units. So the x-axis and the y-axis. And notice also 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, the space is the same. So your interval is important. And the same goes this way. Your interval is important. You choose your interval, but use a realistic interval which is going to make your drawing of the graph easy. All right? Now, they're telling you that this one hormone is FSH, other one is estrogen, the other one is LH, and the other one is progesterone. Now, another question could have just given you this graph without labeling all these hormones. They could have called it hormone 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? Good. Notice also, yes, if you are drawing a line graph or a bar graph where there's more than one set of information, you need to label it, like how this is labeled. FSH is given, or you can have a key on the side that this line will be that, this one here will be something else, this one here will be something else, and so on and so on and so on. So you need a key. Good. Explain how the graph, now again, this is not your ordinary question. It's not just telling you identify which one is progesterone, what does progesterone do, what does estrogen do, and so on. It's asking you a heavy question. And what is the question? It explain how the graph, how? Explain how the graph supports the following statements. What is the statement? That estrogen causes the release of LH. What in other words, what they're asking you guys is, in this graph, what information is telling you, the reader of this graph, that estrogen causes the release of LH? You need to look at the graph. You know that from your work that estrogen stimulates the release of LH. But that's not what they're asking you. They're asking you, how does this information here support it? So we have to look at, isolate now the 2 hormones. That's estrogen and LH. Let's look at the way they are moving. Let's look at estrogen. From day 0 to about day 8, it's fairly stable. From day 8, it starts moving up, increasing there, as you can see. What has happened to LH in this time? LH has been fine in a constant up to that day. But as estrogen increased first, thereafter, there's the increase coming here. Then does LH. And estrogen peaks first and then LH. Look at that. This is what the graph is telling you. This is the evidence that we are looking for. So the skill here is to be able to read the graph. And guys, once you learn the skill of drawing a graph, then automatically, if you can draw a graph properly, that means you can read any graph. And once you have that skill, you don't have to learn it for each exam because the skill is embedded in your mind. So you just need to take information. So this how many marks was it? I think it was about 4 marks or 2 marks or whatever. The 2 marks, you didn't need to study anything. You just needed to know how to read the graph. And let's look at the answer. LH increases or peaks after estrogen. Can you see what I showed you? There's LH. It's increasing after estrogen there. And it also peaks after estrogen. Or you could have said it the other way, that estrogen peaks or increases before LH peaks or increases. Same thing. The whole thing is that this is supporting the evidence that estrogen is causing LH to peak. Now, the next one says the woman did not become pregnant during this cycle. So what evidence is there in this graph? And that means your only information that you can use is about hormones. Because this graph is only telling you about hormones. They're not talking about corpus luteum here. They're not talking about endometrium. You can't see that here. Only you can see is the level of the hormones. So from that, what information tells you whether a woman has fallen pregnant or not? Among the hormones. That means in our hormones of FOLP. F-O-L-P. FOLP. Remember? First is FSH, then is estrogen, then is LH, and then is progesterone. Don't forget that. Now, in this situation here, there are 2 hormones that can inform us whether the woman has fallen pregnant or not. And that is not estrogen and not LH. They are not involved in that process. It can only be FSH and progesterone. What about progesterone? What is one of the functions of progesterone? You write it 1,000 times. You say progesterone maintains pregnancy. So that means while a woman is pregnant, the level of progesterone in her blood must be high because its job is to maintain pregnancy. So you keep that in your mind. Okay? So progesterone we have to think about. And FSH's job is to stimulate follicle development. If a woman is pregnant, there is no need for another follicle to form because it would be wasted. Good? Keep that in your mind. So notice we're not talking about the answer only, but we're talking about the understanding behind the answer. So let's look at this graph. Here's progesterone. What has happened to progesterone around day, about day 23 in this particular case? What has happened to the level? Lloyd, can you help us here?
Yeah.
What has happened to the level of progesterone there?
Well, the progesterone levels just drastically dropped off.
Drop down. Important, very important. You heard that. Lloyd did not study this section. He just was put in the deep here. I didn't even tell him I'm going to ask him this question, but I've asked him the question. He has just read and he looked at this graph and he saw progesterone. Now you know the other information because you know the function of progesterone. Tie the 2 together and you get your answer. Let's go to the answer. Let's see. Progesterone level, Lloyd told us, decreased at around day 28. We don't have to say fertilization did not take place. They told us that fertilization did not take place. What evidence is supporting that? And let's look at the other one I was talking about. FSH is the, which one is that? Now I must get my bearings right. The grayish line there, that one there. What's happening after day 26 there? You can see there's a slight increase in FSH after that. Maybe you won't be able to see it on the screen so well, but on your study notes, you'll be able to see that. While we're talking about the study notes, guys, I want you to focus also on the multiple choice questions, the one-word answers. The way I've structured that is to develop all the questions around reproduction in vertebrates and so on. So please learn that as well. Name the hormone that triggers, I almost said evolution there. That would be a question for some scientists like Darwin to figure out. I wouldn't be able to figure that one out. Name the hormone that triggers ovulation. And that is straightforward, LH. Now here, we're going back to theory. In other words, it's not on the graph, it's on your head, in your head rather. You needed to know this. This is information you needed to know. State when ovulation took place in this female. Now again, you got to look at LH. When did LH peak? You go to your graph, and you see LH peak there, and if you're coming down there, it's somewhere on day 12 or 13, between day 12, 13, somewhere around there, that we would accept, day 12, 13. Explain the relationship between the hormones, progesterone, and FSH. What is happening to the pen today? Progesterone and FSH in a menstrual cycle. How are they related? Let's look at that quickly. High levels of progesterone inhibits the release of FSH. When progesterone levels are high in the body, FSH levels will be low. It won't be secreted too much or released. So no further follicles develop when progesterone levels are high. This is the purpose. We do not want to waste follicles. As long as progesterone is high, it could be that there is an egg in the system. Either it's still in the system or it's implanted. So we don't need more. If fertilization takes place, however, progesterone levels remain high throughout pregnancy. That means it must maintain pregnancy, as we discussed. However, if fertilization does not occur, progesterone levels decrease, allowing FSH levels to rise again for the stimulation of another follicle. So a type of negative feedback mechanism exists between progesterone levels and FSH levels. With that food for thought, I gave you back to Lloyd.
Cool, guys. I hope you guys are following along. And remember to keep entering that competition with Intel. When we get back, we'll check on the leaderboard and see who's ahead. But until then, have a good break. Don't go away. Welcome back, Mindsetters. So we've been tallying up the votes today, and so far Nigeria is far in the lead, then Germany coming second, France in third, and Algeria is coming last. Come on, guys, keep your votes coming in. And then at 3:30 is the cutoff for this competition for today, and we'll choose a finalist out of today that will win the tab at the end of the week out of the 5 finalists. So guys, keep it going, and you've got 25 minutes to keep that going. So let's get on to the lesson. Aslam?
Thanks, Lloyd. Guys, come on, what you doing to our brothers in Algeria? Africa, support Africa, man. Come on, like the page for Africa as well. Let them come up. Half of the French team are from, actually the backbone of the French team are from Algeria. Our Algerian brothers are helping them. Next question, the question 4. The 2 graphs below show the changes in temperature. Now, again, a slight change now. It's a graph question, but now we're not talking about hormones. We're talking about temperature. So the graphs below show changes in temperature in a woman's body, and they're giving you the levels of estrogen and progesterone. So they're linking the two together now. The release of the ovum takes place when there is a rise in body temperature. That's a clue. They're giving you a clue that when there's a rise in body temperature, that means ovulation is taking place in this time. You note that some women may use, or some couples rather I should say, may use this temperature information, data from the temperature, as a contraceptive. That means they would not have sexual intercourse during the time when the temperature is high, or just after that for a while until the temperature comes back to normal. So in that way they would avoid fertilization from taking place. Obviously not very reliable in that form. So they're saying changes in body temperature of a woman. There they're giving you the temperature there. Obviously 0 there at 36, we're only looking at that. Notice another useful thing to use when you're doing your own data. Don't do it in exams. However, if you have lots of information and from 0 to where your information starts, it's a long way away. You can simply just put these 2 lines and start there to show that. But after that, your units must be the same. Can you see 36,2, 36,5, 0.3, 0.3 again, 0.8, and 37,1, 0.3. There's an interval of 0.3. Changes in body temperature of a woman. So your 2 variables are given in your title. Good. And here you got your temperature. Temperature is degrees Celsius. Here we could have had time and your bracketed day. But if you had day there, in that case, it was fine also. Notice they're giving you days there and whatever is happening. So let's look at this temperature here. We're seeing that the woman's temperature is fairly okay there. It dips there around day 12 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, from there to there, in that period, the temperature has increased. But notice that this temperature increase we're talking about is not a drastic change in temperature. We're looking at 36, say 5, 6, about 6 or 7 to 37,1. We're looking at a 0,4 increase in the temperature there. Sometimes it could be up to 1, but even 1 degree Celsius is a small, in real terms, it's a small increase. So you need to be very careful when you're dealing with these things. Okay, so they're telling you that that's what's happening there. And let's go further down. Then it stays high for a while, and then it starts coming down back to normal again. Okay, the hormone levels, this is another graph now, changes in estrogen and progesterone levels in a female's, to complete the heading there, all right? So here, hormone levels in the blood, and this would be in arbitrary units. They're not giving you much units, they're just showing you, because here it's a relative thing. It's talking about lower and higher. We're not looking at specific measurements. So you don't have to put units there in that case. Right. And again, the days, same will be like the one on top. And they're giving you estrogen and progesterone, what is happening there and what is happening there. Good. What was the temperature of the woman on day 15? So again, straightforward. You need to go to the graph. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to do this. You go straight to the graph and you read off the graph. What was the temperature? That's day 15 there, and you go across. It's 37,1 degrees Celsius. You can see what they've told them there, because of there's no lines, etc. You have to accept anything between 36,9 to 37,1, depending on the print and so on. But notice 1 mark is given for the figure and 1 is for the unit, because the unit was not given here. If it said name or provide, sorry, for example, in degrees Celsius, the temperature of the woman on day 15, then they sometimes do not give you a mark for the unit. But as a habit, keep writing the units down. By how many degrees Celsius did her temperature vary between 13 and 15? So you need to look at day 13 and day 15. So you take your reading at day 13, that's around there, right, going across, and you take your reading at day 15, and let's see what we have there. The answer would be, so you remember, your first part of the answer could have been anything between 36,9 to 37,1, but your second answer had to be 36,2, not your second answer, the second part of the question, the one that you're going to deduct by. All right? So 36,9, not by, you're going to deduct from. 36,9 to 37,1 minus 36,2, and your answer will be anything between 0,7 to 0,9, depending what number you used there. You need to show the calculation, because you would have got 1 mark for that operation and 1 mark for the answer. In this answer, they wouldn't give you a mark for the Celsius because we gave it earlier. But you still write it down. From the graph, state 2 factors that indicate that ovulation had occurred. And again, this is testing what we said earlier. Number 1, the temperature rose. By the way, this is not a rose, a flower. A rose, a past tense of rise. Huh? The estrogen level decreased, and the progesterone level started to increase. Let's see where that happens. The temperature rose. There's it. There. Good. So ovulation has occurred. And the estrogen levels decrease and progesterone levels increase there. The 2 important ones are this one and this one here for our studies. We're more interested in those ones because they're part of what we prescribe. Explain the importance of the higher level of progesterone from day 15 to day 20. Can you see that this question is not much different from what we asked you about the relationship of progesterone and FSH earlier? Let's look at that quickly. It's to maintain, come down. Good. To maintain the thickness of the endometrium, to prepare the uterus lining for the embryo. This is the purpose of it there. Remember here, we haven't spoken about pregnancy. We are talking about in the cycle. Why must it stay after ovulation has taken place? What has happened? Let's just look at that quickly. This is what we are talking about. So the egg has been released here. This egg is going to travel that way. So if fertilization takes place anywhere in this area here, then implantation must take place in this area here. So look at the processes that are taking place. Ovulation, one, ovulation, two, possible fertilization, and three, implantation. It's important that we understand these concepts, so it's no sense just answering the question. So ovulation, release of an egg or ovum from the ovary. Fertilization, fusion of sperm and egg. And implantation is when a fertilized egg is attached to the uterine wall. Uterine wall. Come on. To the uterine wall. We say it has become implanted. Okay? And then development will take place thereafter of this fertilized egg, and the development will lead to it becoming a fetus. And we say in this period, when all this happens, we say that the woman is pregnant, or we say that gestation has taken place, or the woman is in a period of gestation or gestation. Okay. Thereafter, the fetus will develop, and we have to then give birth to this baby. Okay. So it's a whole series of things that are going to take place. And this question is asking all of this by showing you some graphs. So it's not always about chunks of information that you need to know. From a graph, a given set of data, we could put the same data in a table and ask you to draw the graph. You need to be able to summarize what we just said there, what I just summarized for you now in words. You need to learn the skill. We don't do this all the time for you. We need to show it to you from time to time. You need to learn the skill. You need to transfer the same skill to other portions of your work and other subjects so that you get better in it. We had one question about spermatogenesis, am I right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so the person wanted to know an explanation of spermatogenesis. Let's just go there again. We've done it already in that question. I just want to highlight it again. First of all, I'm going to have a heading, gametogenesis. And guys, this is all you... why does this thing do that to me? You need to know only the following, what I'm going to put on the board. The process of gametogenesis or spermatogenesis and oogenesis is much more than what I'm writing here. Like I showed you on the diagram with the different stages. But all you need to know that in spermatogenesis, all right, what happens in spermatogenesis, I said diploid cells, first point, divide by meiosis. Oh, where were these cells from? Diploid cells, first point. Second point, in the seminiferous tubules of the testes, divide by meiosis to form haploid sperm cells. That's all you need to know there. And on this side, oogenesis, diploid cells. Notice the same words. Where from now? In the follicle of the ovary now, because we're dealing with a female egg, right? Again, divide by meiosis. I should have left those things in the same color to make it easy. Divide by meiosis to form haploid ova. That's sperm, here is ova, it's eggs. So that's the only thing you need to know in terms of spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Remember, the key thing is, actually what is spermatogenesis and oogenesis? It's meiosis. Meiosis is taking place, one cell that was diploid, divided to form haploid cells. This is what meiosis is all about. It's a little bit more complicated than what I have here, but the syllabus only prescribes what I have on the screen. That's all you need to know. So don't overcomplicate your study. Keep that in mind. With that, over to Lloyd.
Cool, guys. I hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. Remember, all the notes from today's show can be found on our site, learn.mindset.co.za. You can also see it on Facebook. You'll find the links on there. And remember, guys, it's the last few minutes to put in your entries for today's competition. So get onto our Facebook site, like the photos of your team, and keep entering. And we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, Mindsetters. And today we have a question from Dale Adams. Thank you for your question, Dale. It's about answering essay questions. Aslam, sorry. Got my names mixed up there.
No
and
problem.
he asks, what is the most effective way to answer long essay questions in this subject?
So we're talking to Dale. Dale wants to know how one answers long questions, which in life science generally either are paragraphs or question for the essay generally. And Dale's focus is more on the essay and wants to know what to expect, etc., etc. Now, firstly, unfortunately, neither Lloyd nor myself are magicians, so we cannot predict what questions to expect. Some children send me a question on my Facebook page and asked me the other day, what is the essay for the exam, June exam? Now, I can't see your June exam, so I can't tell you what your essay is. What we need to do, however, is to develop your essay writing skills. And that's the question from Dale that I'm latching on to, and we're going to discuss that first before we look at the question we have. And we've slotted your question, Dale. You must be thinking, why didn't we answer your question when you posted it long time ago? Because I'm dealing with an essay question right now. This is why we kept your question for now. Okay? So first of all, in terms of an essay question, certain golden rules. One is read the question carefully. And I mean, this is not only for an essay question, it's for every question. But more so for an essay because you got to read between the lines also. You got to then highlight, and again, this is also for most questions. And this highlighting does not have to become a physical thing that you have to underline. It has to become in your mind a mental thing eventually. But you've got to start somewhere. And the starting point is highlight the key words, and more so, in the essay especially, highlight the verb, because the verb is going to tell you what to do. The verb is a doing word, it's telling you what to do. Further than that, you need to concentrate on the following criteria. Relevance. That means you must only write about the question that is being asked. If they ask you in an essay in human reproduction, comment on the suitability of the male and female reproductive organs to carry out the job of reproduction. You can't talk about that a woman uses makeup to attract the male, or the male uses deodorant to attract the female. That's not relevant. The question is asking about the reproductive organs, not the behavior of the male and the female. So you're only going to talk about the reproductive organs. In other words, in the male, the penis, all the other structures, testes, etc., that are associated. In the female, you're going to talk about the ovary, the endometrium, the fallopian tubes, the vagina, the cervix, etc. How are these suited for that? So in other words, you're going to name all these parts, and then you're going to say how they suited. And how does one answer how they suited? You must say what special quality each of those parts have to do the job at hand. I always say when we're talking about suitability, we are talking about how is this candidate suited for this job. Every part in your body, every cell in your body has a job. And with that job comes a job description. For that person or that organ or that cell to fit the job description, it must have certain qualities. If you want to employ a driver, if he does not have a license, he does not meet the criteria. You can't employ him because he does not have a license to drive. That is what is required. But if you want a receptionist, you may not need the person to have a license. The receptionist must be able to use the computer, must be able to answer phones, etc., etc., etc. So this is what we're talking about suitability. So in other words, relevance must be only about that. Secondly, there must be logical flow. If you're giving a process or describing a process, you can't start at the beginning, jump to the end, come back to the beginning, jump to the end, go to the middle, come to the front, go to the back. It doesn't make sense. It must make sense. It must be easy reading for me when I'm reading it, when I'm allocating you a mark. And it must be comprehensive. Meaning, it must answer all parts of the question. Most of the essay questions have 2 or more parts to them. So if you leave out 1 or more of those parts, that means you haven't completed the job. You must complete the job to get the mark for comprehension. By the way, this is what is used for synthesis in your essay. So to all of you guys, and I've said it 1,000 times, James must be laughing every time I say this, because synthesis does not mean you have to write down synthesis and write a paragraph under that. Synthesis mark, the 3 marks, are given when we judge your essay based on these 3 criteria. That means after I mark it, was your essay relevant? Did you talk about makeup when I was asking you about the internal organs? If you did, you're not going to get that mark. Were you jumping around all over the show and not going in order? You're not going to get the logical flow. And did you go halfway in your answer? Did you leave out certain things that I asked you? You're going to lose that mark there. So bearing in mind, this is the skill that you need. Now, unlike other essays in history, composition, creative writing, where you need an elaborate introduction and an elaborate conclusion, life science does not require this. The life science mark, how many marks are there? 20 marks. There are 20 marks. 17 of these marks are given for factual content. and 3 of those marks are given for synthesis. RLC. Relevant, logical, comprehensive. So we're not giving you for creativity, and there's nowhere. Look at the criteria I put on the board. There's no marks for creativity. There's a mark for relevance, there's a mark for logic, and there's a mark for comprehensiveness. And there are 17 marks for facts. You need to list these facts down about that particular question. So this is all you need to know. Now, what will come? Any question from any topic can be given. The one I gave you just now came out from my head. I haven't seen it anywhere asked before. I'm just giving you an essay. Now let's look at the one that's in your exemplar. And guys, I'm hoping you've been following, and I'm hoping that your teachers have given you the 2014 exemplar. Remember that the 2014 exemplar is the closest in terms of format to the 2014 final paper. In format. Okay? That is the way the paper is going to be set. Number one, as I showed you what is in paper 1, in the exemplar that's going to be, because the previous papers, the paper 1 and 2 were different. All right? So let's look at this question from the exemplar paper. It says, name the hormones. So where's the verb? What did I say? Highlight the keywords and the verbs. Name. Name what? The hormones. Whatever comes after the verb is what you have to do. What have you do? You have to name what? You have to name the hormones produced by the testes and the ovaries. And another verb, describe the role of each hormone in human reproduction. Fairly straightforward essay, asking you just to name the different hormones involved in reproduction in a nutshell, but that are secreted by the testes and the ovaries. Not all the reproductive hormones, those that are secreted by the testes and the ovaries, and give their role in reproduction. Not other roles of those hormones, but in human reproduction. So let's look at that answer. Dale, by the way, I'm hoping that you are listening, or you're watching anyway, and if you have a further question, follow up on what you've asked, please post that so that Lloyd will then pass that on to me, so that we answer your question. There's no other way that we would know that we've answered your question. Give a thumbs up if you're okay with what we've done, or follow-up questions. So we can have a small heading if we want to here. We can say hormones secreted by the testes. You're not going to get a mark for that, because you just needed to name them. What is the name? Testosterone. First of all, it's produced by the seminiferous tubules in the testes. That also, there's no mark given for that actually, because they asked you for the name and its role. So what does it do? Can you see what's happening? During puberty, it causes the voice to deepen. Also, as vocal cords elongate in the larynx. The development of muscles. The growth of facial, pubic, and body hair. Development of the penis and the testes. And last but not least, the production of sperm in the testes. So as you can see, one will be given for the name of the hormone, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 roles are given, but you get a maximum of 5. Now, unfortunately, on your question paper, they don't tell you that you're going to give you a maximum of 5 and whatever. It all depends on the examiner, how he set the essay, and how he allocated marks. So you need to answer the question as comprehensively as possible. All right? Estrogen, now we can have another hormone here, or we can say female. All right, or rather, let's be clever about that. Ovary and the hormones. So can you see that the person has spoken about the testosterone and they've completed. They didn't say testosterone one function, then went to estrogen another function, then went back to testosterone one function, and so on. They completed that. So you see where the logic comes from now. And sometimes use your logic and try and present the hormones in the order in which they are secreted, especially when you're talking about the female reproductive, because that tells a story. You are telling a story in the essay. You are explaining to this examiner as though he or she doesn't know anything about this section. You are teaching it to them. So teach it in a logical way so that they can follow your story easily. Okay? So estrogen, notice our hormones in a female are what? FOLP, FSH, estrogen, LH, progesterone. Now, I want you, as we're going along, we're going to tick the ones that they are telling us about here. So the first one is estrogen, so they're talking about estrogen. Estrogen is produced by the Graafian follicles in the ovary, good. It causes the lining of the uterus endometrium to become thick. What are we doing? We're simply giving the functions of estrogen. Why are you doing that to me? Okay, to become thicker. Why? To prepare for possible implantation. You have to explain. You can't just say, it's not just, let's go back to the question. I just want to see something quickly. And describe the role. They're not saying state the role. When you state the role, thickens the endometrium. You're describing the role. Or if they could have changed this word, even better to say, explain the role. Then you'd say why that hormone is secreted. Okay? So where were we? There. Right. And during puberty, because it's part of reproduction in the body, it stimulates the widening of the pelvis, the growth and development of the breasts, the growth of the female sex organs, and the start of the menstrual cycle, ovulation, and menstruation. So again, 1 mark for that, and from here, some more marks with a maximum of 7. Progesterone, produced by the corpus luteum, and later the placenta. Remember, initially, by the way, what's the corpus luteum? I forgot, we got notes there at the bottom. There's your Graafian follicle with the ovum. When ovulation takes place, the ovum is released. We are left with this part here, which is an empty follicle. Now, this is called corpus luteum. This corpus luteum secretes progesterone. If the female does not fall pregnant, this thing will degenerate, progesterone levels will drop, etc. If she falls pregnant, it stays for a while, but it will still degenerate, and thereafter placenta will continue with the secretion of progesterone. What does it do? It causes further thickening of the endometrium. Why? So that implantation can be made easier. And also, notice here now you are giving that story about the negative feedback here, because it's important. High levels of, not progesterone, but high levels of progesterone inhibits the secretion of FSH by the pituitary gland, which in turn prevents further development of any ovum, new ovum in the ovary. There's a maximum of 5 there, and I don't know if I didn't put it there, the R and the L and the C. In other words, if the child spoke about anything else, now let's go there, sorry, I just need to tick something. I need to tick progesterone. Notice we did not talk about that and that. Why? Because this question asked us to talk about the hormones of the ovaries. The F and the L, the FSH and the LH are secreted by the pituitary gland, although they are reproductive hormones, but they're not secreted. Now, if you had to mention that, you would have lost the mark for relevance. If you left out progesterone and you only spoke about estrogen and testosterone, you would have lost the mark for comprehensiveness. And if you were flying around all over, you would have lost the mark for logic. With that logical statement, let me hand you over to Lloyd.
Thanks, Aslam. So I hope you guys have all gotten your entries in, because unfortunately for today, the entries have closed. But let's take a quick break, and when we get back, we can discuss who the winners are, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, Mindsetters, and it's the end of today's competition, and it seems like the winners have been Nigeria with 70 likes. So from Nigeria, everyone that entered and everyone whose name has been put into the raffle is in this box right now, and we're going to do a quick draw now with Aslam. Aslam, do you want to pick out the lucky winner?
You guys trust me to do the right thing. All right? Let's see.
Let's see. Let's see if you can pick out the...
Can I look in, Lloyd?
No, rather don't.
Not at all, eh?
Cool. Let's see. There's the winner. And the winner is Neo Lukele. Neo Lekela, you're a finalist for the final 5, and you might be getting your hands on that tablet. So stay tuned, and remember, guys, the competition is happening tomorrow as well. But before we get to that, let's answer some of the questions you guys had from
Neo,
today's show.
don't forget that I pull your name out, and I'll give you my address later.
Just in case. Okay, guys, so the questions...
One was on an essay.
We have an essay question from Rendani. Rendani asks, how is he supposed to answer a question that's phrased with write 3 advantages and 4 disadvantages? Does he just write 17 facts because each fact is a mark, or does he stick with the instructions given?
Good. Rendani, that's an excellent question. And as you would have picked up from this particular question, I just want to catch on this one here. If you look at this particular question, although there's given one bullet here, progesterone causes further thickening of the endometrium. That would be the 1 mark, obviously. But there's an expansion to that, that it is ready for implantation of the embryo. So it doesn't mean that if you're stating one sentence as such, that you're going to get 1 mark for it. Now here she's talking about, and Dan is talking about 4 advantages and 3 disadvantages. You would have seen a lot of that in the pre-2011 era, when it was compulsory for the essay to be what was called then LO3, or now it's called SA3, specific aim number 3. And what was that? Is how life science is connected to the world. So things like advantages and your opinions for and against were highlighted in the essay. There's been a move away from that. However, it doesn't mean that you cannot get something like that. But now let's take her particular case. We're talking about 4 advantages and 3 disadvantages. Now, generally in an essay, they won't tell you to list or state them. They would say explain them. Right? In this particular case, you would have got 4 times 2 is 8 there for each of them, and 3 you would have got another 6 there for mentioning them, so 14. So somewhere along the line, in today's time, we would have had to add something more. We would have had to make this. Remember, this must come up to 17 somehow. And 9 out of 10, look at the essays that we've shown you on the board, and look at the essays that have been tested. There's not only 17 facts, there's much more than 17 facts, of which the maximum that you can get is 17. Let's look at this particular one again. So, maximum 5. There's more than 5, but you can only get 5 in this part, and so on and so on and so on. And what I like is the question that Rendani asked: do I answer the question, or do I just list 17 facts? You answer the question. You answer the question. When you answer the question, your facts are embedded in your answer, and in that way, you're getting credit for what is given there in that particular answer. I'm hoping that that answers your question, Rendani. And Dale has given us a thumbs up that she understands what we're saying about this essay here. I just want to also discuss very quickly, while we're talking about essays and possible essays, and let's think about what has happened in the last couple of years in the essay. The one question would say, for example, explain the role of all the hormones in the menstrual cycle. Right, because they specified menstrual cycle here, menstrual cycle, they didn't say ovaries. And if menstrual cycle has to be in the female, so we're only talking about the female hormones. So you can see your relevance. And here you would talk about FOLP. If you remember FOLP, then you got the logical sequence as well. Because you're going to start with FSH, you're telling your story. FSH causes estrogen to be secreted from the follicles. Estrogen, then increase of that has triggered LH to be secreted, and ovulation then in turn causes progesterone to be secreted. Not the ovulation, but the structure that forms because of ovulation, corpus luteum, causes progesterone. So you will answer the question in that way. So this is the way you would answer it. In other words, you're just writing this down because it just said explain the role of that. Or if they had to say, explain how the menstrual cycle occurs. Then you're going to now talk about what do we mean by the menstrual cycle, and then you will describe all the events, including the non-hormonal events that are taking place, the shedding of the endometrium. And remember here, while we're talking about shedding, the menstrual cycle includes the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycles. There's a cycle that's taking place in the uterus, and there's a cycle that's taking place in the ovary. And the cycle is all about hormones and what they do. Right? Whereas menstruation is actually part of this uterine cycle, and therefore it is part of the menstrual cycle. Do not confuse menstruation, it's a process, with the menstrual cycle, a sequence of events that take place every month in a female's body. Last year, the essay asked about the menstrual cycle. Many learners spent 1.5 to 2 pages talking about menstruation, which earned them only a maximum of 2 marks for the facts. One for saying menstruation and explaining it, that's 2 marks. Then, if they didn't talk about anything else apart from the menstruation, they would have got a mark for relevance, and they would have lost the other 2 marks. However, if they went into menstrual and started talking about tummy cramps and all the other non-essential parts compared to reproduction, they would have even lost the relevance marks. So in terms of that, that is where we are. I'm now going to go to the challenge question. Let's go to the challenge question. I already read it to you. You have it on your laptop, or you have it in your study notes somewhere. And the first question says, explain how implant prevents fertilization from taking place. And the answer, remember, I went to pains in underlining that word progesterone, hinting to you that you need to focus on that for this answer. And the answer then, the high levels, because remember, this thing is releasing progesterone over and above what your body is releasing. This thing is releasing progesterone into your body. And therefore, the high levels of progesterone. Don't say progesterone on its own. You have to say the high levels of progesterone. What does it do? It inhibits FSH. In other words, we're talking about that negative feedback that I've been harping about all day. Inhibits FSH, so the follicles are not stimulated, and therefore does not grow. And if they do not grow, then the LH will be inhibited as well, and ovulation is prevented. The egg or ovum is not released. And if that happens, obviously, then the body is actually, by the way, what's happening here? The body is tricked into believing that either there is an egg in the fallopian tube, or that fertilization has taken place. This is what these chemicals do to the body. They are fooling the body, they're tricking the body into thinking that fertilization has taken place, so therefore there's a high level of progesterone, and in turn, no need for FSH, and when FSH is inhibited, no new follicle will develop, and if no new follicle will develop, that means you're not going to get estrogen. If you're not going to get estrogen, that means you're not going to get LH, and if you're not going to get LH, you're not going to get ovulation, and if you don't get ovulation, there's no egg, and if there's no egg, there's no fertilization, the woman is shooting blanks. I said that fast, right? The last part. Question 2. Suggest one advantage of using implanon rather than an oral contraceptive. An oral contraceptive, the pill, you got to take every day. So that's the advantage. First of all, once this rod is inserted into the body, the woman doesn't have to keep remembering. So the chance of forgetting is low. Right? So either you'd have said that, Or you could have given the converse of that, that if it's the oral pill, the person may forget to take the oral and which often happens. By the way, even oral contraceptives taken during illness, when a woman, especially if she has diarrhea and vomiting, you figure it out. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know this. If you're taking a tablet, but you have diarrhea, will the tablet work for you? It can't work for you unless it's a tablet that's going to stop diarrhea. Those ones have a way of working. But the others, you're taking it in, it's coming out. If you're vomiting it out, so there's no time for that tablet to be digested. So if you have diarrhea, remember that the contraception is not working. The pill will not work. So stay away. If you do not want to have a baby, you stay away. Right? Does not have to be taken daily. And it's not affected by illness. Vomiting, there I just told you that now, as it is released directly into the blood. As it is released directly into the blood, it acts quicker than all the other contraceptions that contraceptives that we use. Lloyd?
Cool, Aslam.
I'm keeping you on your toes there.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I've been
man.
on my toes this whole lesson.
I felt I needed to do this in detail.
Yeah, very
they
interesting.
understand.
It's been very interesting. Guys, you guys have had a lot of great answers to that challenge question, and I hope you guys have really enjoyed this lesson. Remember, tomorrow we are going to have another competition exactly the same as this one, and except it'll be with tomorrow's team. So just stay tuned. It's not you won't run out of time to enter the competition. You might still have a chance of winning that nice tablet by Intel. Just remember to enter next week, and remember, all our notes are on our page. You can go to facebook.com/learnextra. And Aslam, do you have anything to say?
Come back to me, Roy. Lloyd, I'm saying Roy, see? I'm making the same mistake. By the way, in life science, it's called a mutation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm hoping that you've enjoyed what we have done. We've tried to make it as comprehensive as possible without over-teaching. We want to answer questions. The key, guys, at this level in your life is to get the technique right rather than the content. I'm not saying you mustn't learn the content. You have to learn the content. But if you learn all the content, you don't know what to do with it, you've wasted your time learning from the book. So keep that in mind with everything that you do. Go back to this chapter, answer some questions, go back to your June exams, answer the questions, and post them to us so that we can help you to become better as a life science. Lloyd.
Cool, thanks Aslan. As everyone can agree, that was a great lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. My name's Lloyd Armstrong, and it's been great hanging out with you guys. I hope you guys learned a lot from this lesson, and remember, we'll be having live shows for the rest of this week. So you'll have a live show tomorrow, the next day, and they'll all be on different subjects. So this week is for the grade 12s, next week is for the grade 11s, and so on. Just remember to check your schedule. Your schedule can be found on learn.mindset.co.za. And all the notes can also be found on the Facebook page, as well as all competitions. And guys, thanks again for answering that great question, that great challenge question. And thanks. Cheers, guys.